Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our second session of the day. Uh, y'all have chosen wisely. I gotta say, in the entire public library world, there are few better out there at making connections between resources and networking that I've been able to witness than Dr. Noah Lenstra. Noah's just phenomenal. He is a connector and obviously takes joy out of it. I have learned so many new resources because of the work that Noah or Dr. Lenstra has done for I was going to say the world, but that may be too big. But I'm sure there's people all over the world that follow him. So we're in for a treat, y'all. I'm going to turn the mic over directly to Dr. Lenstra, and so he can get started. I know his presentation is just full of information for us. Dr. Thank you so much for being here and already the work that you've done to put this presentation together, but also sharing your wisdom and energy with us. Y'all, we're in for a treat. So thank you, Noah, and I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy, for those kind words, and thank you everyone for being here today. Hopefully I'll give you some new and useful information during the next hour. But I'm hoping that you can also give me some new and useful information. That's the way I like to work. Definitely feel free to put things in the chat, questions, resources, thoughts. As much as possible, I'd love to consider this to be a dialogue and a conversation. And just to kind of get started, our goals for today are to really understand why relationships matter. So what is the utilitarian value of working with others in our communities? It's not just a nice thing to do, it's a must do. So how do we understand that and communicate that both to others in our organization, to our board members, to our directors? How do we build that common ground? Then we will talk about how you can do it. What are some simple steps that you can try to build some new relationships in your area? And finally, we're going to wrap up by talking about the critical importance of advocacy. This work doesn't just happen on its own. We need to have systems in place to advocate for the time needed to build relationships and build partnerships. And in the absence of that advocacy, it simply does not happen. And so just wanted to start with some quick acknowledgements. As Amy mentioned, I've been working on this for a while, but this is certainly not kind of a new idea in public librarianship, and just want to acknowledge and thank people like Kathleen de la Pena McCook at the University of South Florida, who started a website almost 25 years ago that some of you may have come across. This librarian at every table, librarians and community initiatives, and the central focus of Dr. McCook's work is to identify new tables at which librarians might take a place. So this really standing on the shoulders of kind of a lot of amazing librarians who've been committed to this work over time. Also, just wanted to share just a little bit about me. And so, as Amy alluded to, I really enjoy being a connector, finding new connections, discovering new connections. And just wanted to share kind of a side note. Some of you may know about this, but I just learned this morning about this new initiative that Beth Waller is helping to lead with generous support from a philanthropic partner and active collaborations with the Kentucky Department of Community-Based Services, Kentucky Department of Libraries and Archives, and Kentucky Division of Prevention and Community Wellbeing. There's funding being allocated across the state or Commonwealth, I should say, for up to $45,000 per project. And when I learned about this initiative itself, a product of partnerships, my initial thought was based on the work that I've done in South Carolina and other places, are people in Kentucky ready? I don't know if they are. I don't know if libraries in Kentucky are going to be ready to be able to work with partners to kind of develop $50,000 projects. I know a few years ago, I did a project in South Carolina, and one of the things that we learned is that even when there's funding on the table, if a library has to have a community partner and to get the funding, it can be an obstacle. Yeah, and really what I've learned is that to be ready to work collaboratively with others is a skill that is learned, developed. And this knowledge has really come from working over the last 8 years on something called Let's Move in Libraries. And this is just a picture of some of our Let's Move in Libraries fans, members from the Fulton County Library System in Atlanta, Georgia. They printed out this banner using our logo and had it at the summer reading kickoff. Everything that we and I try to do in Let's Move in Libraries is open source, open access. It's really a platform for people that want to share the resources and knowledge that they have to find new ways to work collaboratively with others. And I'd be happy to share more about any aspect of that work if you're interested. But I'll just quickly mention if you'd like to stay abreast of what we're doing, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletters, and that's the best way to kind of stay on top of what's happening with Let's Move in Libraries. But for today, we're really talking not about Let's Move in Libraries, but about community partnerships. So let's think about kind of what does success look like? So we're talking about relationships and community partnerships. What would be a model of success? And for me, a model of success would be something like this story from last year in Iowa. So there was this headline: the city of Humboldt, Iowa, received a $50,000 grant to create a healthy eating, active living plan. And who was involved? So let's take a look at the implementation committee. So we had the director of public health, we had the recreation director. Oh look, the library director, the economic development association director, community schools counselor, community school superintendent, and the regional director of the Upper Des Moines Opportunity. So this is really what we're talking about. This is not a session or a webinar about new initiatives that libraries can do. Let me be clear about that, and let me say that again. This is not a webinar or a session about new initiatives that libraries can do. This is a session and this is a webinar about how you can fundamentally transform how you work with your community and find opportunities to be involved in creating things like a healthy eating, active living plan, be involved in the coalition work that we know really is how communities get transformed. And so let's also spend a moment to really articulate what success isn't. So success is not libraries or librarians being voluntold to pick up the slack in a failing social safety net, which we saw again and again during the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw headlines like Colorado librarians being asked to give out free KN95 masks. But in a way that really led to widespread confusion. People in libraries across Colorado didn't know anything about this new initiative until the governor went and announced it. And so you had librarians telling people, we don't know what the governor's talking about. We weren't included in this development. And please don't come to get your mask because we don't have one. Similarly, Washington Post, public library is the latest place to pick up a coronavirus test. Librarians are overwhelmed. So success is not kind of you kind of just doing new things or being asked to pick up the slack. And I think that's really important to start with because one of the things that we know is true, and I think has really a big part of this new initiative happening in Kentucky is the widespread recognition that in public librarianship, people are burnt out, people are stressed out, people are experiencing trauma, people are being doxxed, intellectual freedom challenges are insane right now. And in the face of all of this trauma and fatigue and burnout, it would be natural to say, let's circle the wagons. Let's say we're not doing anything new anymore. We're just gonna circle up, and put up our guard and say no, say no. We're gonna start saying no to things, and that would be a natural and human response to feeling like you're under siege. But instead, what I'm going to ask you to do is to do actually something quite different, which is to reimagine how you work with those outside your organization, rather than respond to difficulties and trauma by circling the wagons and closing ranks, and putting up the battlements. What we instead, I argue, need to do is to find new ways to work with our communities, and I'll explain why momentarily. But don't take my word for it. So my thinking on this topic really kind of, I think, became cemented when I had the opportunity 2 years ago in 2022 to see this amazing session on whole person librarianship, social services, and public libraries, led by my colleague Ashley Stewart, at the time the library director for the Caseyville Public Library District in small town Southern Illinois. And it was a really wide-ranging session. But the thing that really stood out to me is that Ashley talked about how, as a rural small town library director, she felt like she could push the boundaries, and try new things, such as being the first library in Southern Illinois to offer a drag queen story time, because of the critical community partnerships and relationships that she had spent her entire career building up. And those relationships and those partnerships established a firewall that protected the library during these intellectual freedom attacks. In other words, if you have other people's backs, they're going to have yours. And I think that's the real lesson. The most important thing you can do to prepare for the next attack that's going to be coming, the next disaster that's going to be coming, is to build your network, and build your safety network, which is people. Um, and so how do we do it? What can we do to go out and cultivate and sustain the relationship-driven library? Well, in a word, it really comes down to communication. And really what I've seen again and again, and I'm probably you have seen this as well in your libraries, is that unless you are already working with people or organizations, they do not think of you. I've seen that again and again, talking with dozens and dozens of library partners, in Parks and Recreation, health departments, YMCA. Unless you're already working with people, they don't know you exist. They may know of the existence of the library, but they certainly don't know of the existence of you, librarian. And so it really starts with communication. What we found is that the ultimate goal of the relationship-driven library, therefore, is to transform how people in our community perceive the library. We found in talking with over 80 partners, library partners across America, that most people, when they reflect back on their experience partnering with public libraries, before they had a working relationship with the public librarian, they really just saw the library as the book repository. That's the space. Even if they love the library, that's the place to go to story time. That's the place for Nana to go to the book club. It's the place to pick up your holds, and that's about it. As potential partners get to learn a little bit more about the library, they start to see it as this trusted resource. It's a space that's in every community. It's always there. People turn to the library, especially during disasters. It has stability. It has trust. But this really, this stage two really leads to what I showed earlier. It leads to, okay, we're in the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's put KN95 masks in libraries. Okay, there's some disaster happening. Let's get the librarians to distribute coronavirus tests. And really to have success. we need to help our partners move from this idea of merely seeing the library as a trusted resource to helping them see us, see you and me. They have to see librarians as critical community partners, and that takes time. It's not automatic, and I guarantee if you want to do it in your community, there's a lot of work that you're going to have to do. Uh, um, and so let's talk about what that work might look like. And first, let's kind of be clear about the challenge. What I've seen in my work, when you talk to a random person who has an idea of partnering with a public library, this is typically what potential partners see. People will often ask librarians, can you distribute something for me? Can you host an event for me? Can you market something for me? Can you do something for me? And our job is to help these potential partners instead ask a different suite of questions, centering around the idea of how can we work together. And I'll just put in the chat, if you're interested. All of these figures and most of what I'll be talking about for the next few minutes is in a toolkit that you can access on our website, and go through in greater detail if you're interested. But we're not off the hook, guys. We also have some work to do. So the corollary of that is that if you talk with librarians around the country, typically librarians, before they do anything new, they're going to ask a bunch of questions about their own internal capacity. They're going to ask, do I have the space to do this new thing? Do I have the budget to do this new thing? Do I have the staff to do this new thing? Can I do this based on the assumption, I would say the wrong assumption, that anything new that is going to come about has to be entirely managed by the library in its capacity. And instead, I think we're seeing some visionary librarians ask a different question, asking first and foremost, who can I work with? Who else cares about the things that I'm seeing? Who's out there that I can connect with to help kind of meet the needs that I'm seeing in my community? So what are we going to do? So this is where we developed this 4-step toolkit on kind of cultivating and sustaining the relationship-driven library. And I'm going to go through the steps in a bit more deliberateness in a minute, but first I just wanted to present our model overall. And it really starts with planting the seeds, planting the idea out in your community that the library wants to be involved in what's happening in the community. You want to go and figure out kind of what are other people in your community interested in, and what needs are out there. And a great way to get started is to look to what we call multi-sector organizations. These are organizations that bring together multiple agencies in your community. Yeah, it could be a health coalition, it could be a chamber of commerce, it could be a Rotary organization, any organization that's trying to be an organization for organizations is the best place to get started, and use connections to build new connections. The next step, after you've kind of planted some seeds, is to nurture these seedlings. And really, this is based on the fact that the process of moving from an idea to a reality is difficult. It's not easy, and it's even more difficult when you're working with a bunch of partners. We all know the phrase "too many cooks in the kitchen," and that can sometimes be a problem in this nurturing stage. So it's focused on building and sustaining trust, and finding ways to protect your idea to help it grow. The third step is really focused on harvesting the bounty. So here we're really interested in kind of really documenting and understanding what you and your partners did together, and also building out that advocacy around the methods that librarians need to be working with others and need to be consulted when something new is happening in the community. And finally, and this might be the most difficult stage to really bring about, since I know kind of public library work, you finish one thing and you have to immediately move on to the next thing. But as much as possible, having time to debrief, to look back and ask, how did things go? While also looking forward and asking, where do we want things to go? So creating that space with your partners to share, to plan, and to kind of check in on how the process went. And so I'm going to go through the steps in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but I wanted to start with something that we really spent a lot of time thinking about as we put together this toolkit, which is the difference between a garden and a recipe. And this kind of table really came about because one of the things that I've heard, in the work that I've done over the last 8 years, is that so often when I go to a conference and talk about, yeah, a yoga class or a cooking class or a seed library or anything, the first question librarians will always ask is kind of, give me the roadmap, give me the recipe that I can follow. Guess what? For the things that really matter, there is no recipe. We need to let go of the idea that there's recipes that librarians can follow to kind of get to the exact same destination as their colleague down the road. For the things that really matter, for the things that transformative, there is no recipe. Instead, we're working in a garden. And why is that important? When you think about a recipe, you think about one person working in a controlled environment. If you have everything that the recipe calls for, you can make the same dish every time. You can follow the same recipe at any time or any place, and you can make a recipe anytime you want if you have all the right supplies. Whereas if you're a gardener, and I would argue if a librarian is a gardener, this is one or more people working in an uncontrolled environment. There's no guarantee of success. You're always dependent on externalities such as the weather, such as the soil conditions. There's a time and a place for different seeds to flourish. You wouldn't go out and plant your seeds in December. That would be foolish. You have to wait until the spring. And there's kind of that cyclical process with time for rest, reflection, and harvesting. So we talk more about this in the toolkit, but I think this can be a really powerful model for thinking about the development of new initiatives through partnerships and through relationships. Okay, so and before we go into the seeds, just wanted to share a couple stories, because I think sometimes this discussion can seem too dry, too academic. So let's kind of take it down to real world situation. So this is a picture of Milagros Tenega, branch manager of the Seabrook Evelyn Metter Library in Harris County, just outside of Houston, Texas. And Milagros had the crazy idea a few years ago of planting a community garden outside of her library. But she didn't go out with the shovel and start moving dirt around. Instead, she kind of wove this idea of a community garden into all kind of the little times that she'd go around. So as Milagros went around the community, she'd be like, "Oh, did you know that what you can get with your library card and canopy and hoopla and Libby and blah blah blah? And also, by the way, we have this great space outside of our library. We think it would be amazing for a community garden. Do you know if there's anyone out there that might want to work with us to make that happen?" So yeah, that was it. That was her planting the seed. And at one of these meetings, she went to a Rotary meeting and gave kind of a spiel about the library. Sign up for your library card, hoopla, story time, Libby, blah blah blah. Oh, and community garden. And at that meeting, the city manager of Seabrook, Texas, was there, and the city manager kind of then filed away in his brain, "Oh, public library, community garden. I never would have thought of that." But then shortly thereafter, a nonprofit organization came to the city manager, and the nonprofit said, "Hey, city manager of Seabrook, Texas, you know what we need? We need a community garden." And the city manager has said, "Okay, well, have you talked to Milagros Tenega, the branch manager at the Evelyn Metter Library?" And the nonprofit said no, because who in America, who in the world, if they're thinking about developing a community garden, thinks they need to go talk to their public librarian? The answer is no one. um, but this nonprofit knew to talk to this librarian because this librarian had planted the seed. They had talked up the idea and put it out into the universe. And guess what? The universe gave back. That's how things work. So Milagros then kind of met with the nonprofit. They started meeting monthly. They came up with a business plan. They got a small $5,000 grant. They decided to start small with an herb garden. They figured out through the course of building that herb garden how to work together successfully. Based on the success of that, they kept going by building a raised bed vegetable garden. After doing that, they continued to build trust, and so they kept expanding. They put up a fruit forest, planting fruiting trees conducive to the region where the library was located. They started a story walk. They started lending gardening supplies, and the collaboration eventually expanded to include an adjacent middle school where middle schoolers would now come over to the library to help tend this growing infrastructure. But guess what, guys? I mean, none of this would have happened if you didn't have a librarian who was confident enough to go out and talk about an idea that did not exist. She's not pitching what the library is currently offering. She's pitching an idea of what could be, what does not exist now. And that's really what it all comes down to. Um, and sometimes the seeds land in your lap. So in this first example, we have a librarian going out and planting the seed, but sometimes the seeds come to us. And the question is, are we ready to strike when the iron is hot? We better be. So here's an example of that. So in Marion, Iowa, around 2014, the Area Agency on Aging got this big federal grant to support what they called congregate meals. And in the language of gerontology, a congregate meal is kind of similar to Meals on Wheels. So Meals on Wheels, they're taking like a hot meal out to people and giving it to them. Congregate meal is kind of the opposite of that. You're offering free hot meals in kind of a community space, such as a senior center. And in fact, most congregate meal services are in senior centers. But when the Heritage Area Agency on Aging got this big grant, they were in a bit of in a pickle, in a conundrum. They wanted to do congregate meals in the town of Marion, Iowa, but the town of Marion, Iowa did not have a senior center. So they're like, what are we going to do? There's no senior center. How can we do this program? We have the funding, we have everything that we need. We just need a space. And around the same time, the Marion Public Library was getting ready to plan for a new library. So in the very early stages of planning for this new public library, they were doing these community conversations, inviting the residents of Marion to come in and tell the library what would they like to see in this hypothetical new library that we're getting ready to build. And at one of those community conversations, someone from the Heritage Area Agency on Aging came in and they said, hey, librarians, you know what we need in Marion? We need a senior center. Is there any way that you could dedicate a portion of your new library building to a senior center? And the Marion Library staff said, "Oh, that's an interesting idea, and we agree with you. It would be great if Marion had a senior center, but we're not going to do that." And the reason why is the whole reason we're trying to build a new library is we're running out of space. Our library isn't big enough. Were we to have a designated senior center in a new building, we'd be back to square one. But that wasn't the end of the conversation. The library then said, "But tell me more about what you'd like to see in this senior center. Maybe there's a way that we could work together." And then the Area Agency on Aging said, "Well, we got this big federal grant, and we have all the resources to provide free hot meals to senior citizens, but there's no senior center in Marion, so we don't think we can do it in Marion." And the library said, we have a meeting room in our library, and we love to work with community organizations to activate our meeting room. Maybe there's a way that we could work together. And the Heritage Area Agency on Aging, their jaw dropped to the floor. Never in their wildest imagination would they think of doing congregate meals at the public library. It was beyond the pale of what they thought of. Because again, when people think of libraries, they think of books. That's it. But anyhow, because the librarian had the foresight to do that kind of verbal jujitsu, they were off to the races. They started meeting, they started planning. They brought the mayor in at one point. And they figured out how to do this in a way that would kind of not add to anyone's burden. So 11:30 on Monday and Friday, the area agency on aging would come in and set up the meeting room. They would take care of all the logistics, all the food safety. Everything was done by the partner. They worked with a local supermarket to procure the food. But again, all of that was done without any extra work for the librarians. The only thing that the librarians really had to do is to commit to having their meeting room being designated for this free program every Monday and Friday from about 11:30 to about 2. And it was wildly successful, both for the community as well as for the library. It brought incredible press library. And also a lot more older adults. And based on that success, they're like, we want to keep doing this forever. But then in 2020, some things happened that you may recall. First, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and at the same time, there was this terrible, terrible derecho that actually tore across eastern Iowa and tore the roof off the library. So now we have a pandemic, and there's no roof on the library. I mean, it was just absolute chaos. It was a tragedy. And you could think that's the end of the story. I guess the Encore Cafe was great while it lasted. It's gone now. But no, it's not. Eventually, the library was able to build a new library. And one of the first things the library did when they moved into their new space was to bring back the Encore Cafe. So March 3rd, 2023, Encore Cafe back in business, baby. We're rising from the ashes is this new instantiation of this partnership with the Heritage Area Agency on Aging, and it's still going. So yeah, I mean, an amazing story of the power of partnership. And also the work that goes into partnership, and really speaks to everything that we've been talking to up to this point. Partners don't know, they have no idea how to work with you. And guess what? They're not going to know how to work with you unless you explain it to them. Like, I mean, how else would they know how to work with you if you're not telling them? And then kind of being able to figure out a process to kind of build that relationship, keep it going, mobilize it. And yeah, so let's go back to our 4-part model now. So now that we've gone through those 2 examples, again, anything that's great, anything that's transformative, anything that's really going to push the needle forward on the critical issues in your community is going to start with what we call a seed. And we're defining a seed as a confluence of community need and community interest. We're good at finding needs. We always talk about what does the community need, community needs assessment. That's fine. That is necessary but insufficient. Identifying a community need is only part of what you need to do. What you then need to do is who else cares about it? If you identify a community need but nobody else in your community cares about it, that is not something where you should be spending your time. I'm sorry. That's maybe you can get people interested in it, but until other people are interested in the issues that you see, don't touch that thing. There's plenty of other community needs that you can work on. So it's finding that confluence of like where is there a need that's not being met, and who else cares about that need, and through that you have kind of the foundations of success. And so after you've found those needs, after you've found kind of that sweet spot of like, here's something the community needs, and here are other people interested in it. And again, sometimes that seed can literally fall into your lap, as it did in Marion, Iowa. The next step is to give your seedlings the best chance for success. And this is because, as we all know, kind of the process of moving from a crazy idea like congregate meals at the library or a community garden at the library or insert whatever you would like to do here, moving from that idea to a reality is difficult. If it was easy, we wouldn't have this conversation. I wouldn't be here. You'd be off doing it. It's hard. Like let's be upfront about that. But it's hard work, but it's necessary work. And so what we want to do in this stage is to, like they did in Marion and like they did in Seabrook, have meetings, have a structure where you and your partners can kind of meet. Maybe it's maybe it's monthly, maybe it's weekly, maybe it's quarterly, but have a structure in place to kind of help clarify like what's going to happen, who's going to do what can you commit to, what can the partner commit to. That takes time, that takes trust, and the right set of conditions have to come together for the seedling to sprout. And through kind of taking that time of nourishing our seedlings, we give them the best chance of becoming a plant that can nourish us and nourish our community. And then it's really key to celebrate, make a big to do about what you and your partners accomplished. You and your partners have put so much time and work into taking this crazy idea and turning it into a reality. It's so critical that you and your partners take the time to celebrate what came from your work, and also make sure your bounty nourishes those that need sustenance. And a great example of that is the process that they followed. In Seabrook, Texas, where they didn't go out and kind of build an herb garden and a vegetable garden and a fruit forest and a story walk and garden supplies. They didn't do that all at once. Instead, they took kind of a staged approach. It's like we did something small, let's make a big celebration. Then let's do something else and let's do a big celebration. Having that staged approach. It's kind of if you wanna go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. And finally, the last stage here is to, and again, this is probably the most difficult one to do, is to have time to look backwards and look forward. And so you and your partners, especially at the beginning, you might not know each other super well. You might not be really super well versed in how areas, agencies of aging function, or how nonprofits function, or how health departments function, how anyone in your community functions that's not you. And by the same token, those people in health departments, area agencies on aging, parks and recreation, YMCA, they definitely don't know how public libraries work. And so part of this looking backwards and looking forward is to seek to understand what just happened, while also building better mutual understanding about how your respective organizations operate. And that will in turn help you prepare for a future partnership. It will also help you, as it did in Caseyville, Illinois, help you prepare for whatever crisis or disaster is going to be coming down the pike. We don't know what the future is going to foretold, but we know that the more connected we are with others in our community, the better we're going to be able to weather whatever storm is coming down the pike. And finally, just to help that along, one thing that I would really recommend at that stage of looking backwards and looking forward is to have a conversation with your partners about where would we like to go with this partnership. And one way to give that conversation direction is to draw upon resources like this collaboration continuum put together by the Teagle Foundation. So you may start the partnership at kind of a cooperating. So maybe we're cooperating, we're working together, we're sharing resources. Do we want to move into a more of a networking? Maybe we're not going to have a particular initiative that we're going to be working on next year, but maybe we can at least commit to continue to exchange information for mutual benefit. Alternatively, maybe the cooperation went super well, and so maybe you want to have a conversation of even merging some aspects of your operations. having kind of a more integrated approach. Just being aware that there's different options. That all partnerships don't have to look the same, and in fact they don't. Different partnerships are going to look different at different moments of time, and with different partners. And really, just before we move to Q&A, I just want to take a moment here at the end to state the critical importance of advocacy. And this is really important, especially if you are not in a leadership position. If you're a children's librarian, and you don't have the flexibility that, say, a library director may have, you need to be an advocate for this work. Your director might not understand why this work is so important. Alternatively, if you're a library director, your staff might not understand why this work is so important. Your board might not understand why this work is so important. Your friends might not understand why this work is so important. Guess what? You need to tell them. I mean, it's that simple. So kind of being able to explain to people in simple language about the power of the garden, and the power of relationships. Relationships may lead to new library advocates and allies, new services, new funding, new spaces, new ideas, new inspiration, new energy, new ways to reach the underserved, and new ways to make a difference. And we need to go out and feel confident to be advocates for the power of relationships so that we can find the time to build them and sustain them. And finally, just a quick plug. If you've done some amazing partnerships that you really want to share with others, consider sharing your story through this I Partner with My Public Library initiative that we started in 2023. We just announced the 2024 awardees in honorable mentions. And I'm really thrilled to share that one of those honorable mentions is the Challenge House Movement, which was nominated by the Hopkinsville Christian County Public Library. So check out what these two partners did together, and consider nominating your partners next summer. And the best way to make sure that you hear about this opportunity when it emerges is, again, to subscribe to our monthly newsletter. And closing out, just my question for you is to who in your workplace or in your community needs to hear what you've heard today? Who's the stick in the mud that you'd like to unstick? What additional information do you need to try something new in terms of building the relationship-driven library? And where do we go from here in terms of this work? I'd love your thoughts. And let's go. The best initiatives really start with people that are passionate and committed. They start small, but they're led by people who have that ability to dream and to imagine a reality that doesn't currently exist. And don't do anything new alone ever. Like that's really what it all comes down to. Don't imagine that you have to carry the world on your shoulders, because you don't. And so, yeah, let's go and do it. And thank you so much for your time. Again, I'm Noah Lenstra, Associate Professor of Library and Information Science. And yeah, now would love to kind of hear any questions, feedback, thoughts that you all have. How does what I've shared kind of mesh with your experience? Let's have a conversation.
If you'd like, you can just go ahead next to your name and unmute, or you're welcome to put things in the chat that have resonated to you. I will also, just so you know, once the transcription's done and edited, I'll be sending this out also to the directors, so they'll have the information at hand too, and can. I think it's rare to have this type of information fleshed out so well, and very, I don't know, kind of feeling where you end up with actual steps toward implementation plus reflection. And so thank you so much for that, Noah. I saw someone post. Oh, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Amy.
And for us in youth services, we know we're often the movers, shakers and the movers. We're the ones that start the grants or we're the dreamers. And so much of this definitely resonates. And it's a good reminder too that we aren't alone. We have people we can partner with. And, yes, the onus or responsibility is a little on us for finding those partners, but some of it is just doing the advocacy that you do outside of the boundaries of the building. Yeah, Ashley wrote the sheet. This has made her feel more confident, and thank you very much. Yeah, it is an important message. Often I hear people speak and say they just don't have enough time and they can't do it all. And the directions of the library keep changing, or the needs of the community keep changing. And so we have to keep changing. It could be very overwhelming if it's, as Noah said, if we're just on our own.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just, as you're thinking, I'll make a quick plug. I forgot to share this earlier, but if you'd like to kind of have an opportunity for informal conversation with other librarians in across North America, kind of committed to this work, or just interested in thinking about it, we do monthly kind of drop-in calls. Very informal, the third Wednesday of the month, every month at 12 p.m. Usually we have, I don't know, between 15 and 20 people. But yeah, if you'd like to kind of hear what other people are doing and kind of just be part of a network, you're more than welcome to join, and would love to see some people. Yeah, join the call.
Mhm. Absolutely. So Noah, thank you so much. What a phenomenal presentation, and quite a gift you've given us. Really things to ponder and to reflect upon and chew through after we hang up. Just thank you so much. What, as I said, what a gift. Yeah, if you can see the chats, you're getting accolades there. So
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just share, like, I should have, so this was, if folks are interested, this is the award-winning partnership from Kentucky that we gave an honorable mention to this year. So Challenge Movement, nominated by Hopkinsville Christian County Public Library. Since 2023, this nonprofit organization works with the library to provide tutoring and snacks to at-risk youth. 5 volunteers provided over 100 hours of tutoring. And I think kind of what why we started this award, and why we think it's important, is that if we want to have more partnerships, we need to celebrate them. We need to shout from the rooftops, like, this is what happens when organizations like this one work with our library. Like, again, we need to change the conversation, and kind of my vision, my dream would be, I'd love to see 10, 15 years from now, anyone in a community that wants to make a difference in the lives of youth and family, those people are going to naturally come to librarians and be like, how can we work together? Like, we're not there now. I think we could get there. I think that's a realistic, achievable goal that we could all work towards.
yeah, I agree. It seems like a no-brainer. Um, but just take it as encouragement and not chastisement in any way. I know you guys are advocating for yourself and your people all the time, but just imagine what that could be like if the place of the library starts to flip flop even in a larger degree. So that'd be really amazing. Again, Dr. Lencha, thank you so much. And to all y'all that's been here listening, thank you also for being here. Um, our time here is ended, and unfortunately, we need to let Dr. Lenstra go. I do want to thank IMLS for funding our conference and enabling us to be here and listen and learn and expand our knowledge. Go ahead, get up, stretch, take a break, have your lunch. We'll be back here again at 1 o'clock Eastern at noon Central Time. Sorry to the Central Time. Hopefully it works out for your lunches that you can eat a little early. We have 3 outstanding sessions ahead of us. The first in this room will be with regarding process art and integrating process art into learning. Our room number 2 is recognizing and reporting child abuse and speaking to how all adults are mandated reporters in Kentucky. And then in room 3, we have the Bikers Against Child Abuse will be here. And Ma is our presenter, and she has a couple sidekicks with her too. I believe Bouncer and Hercules may both show and speak. They are a biker group that work to support and give strength to kids that are currently in the court systems. So they work with the court systems and the police. It's an incredibly powerful program, and they are hoping libraries can help connect them with kids. So stretch your legs, enjoy your time at rest, and find places of peace, and we'll see you back at 1 or 12, depending on your time zone.